Everybody's okay? Okay. Okay. You see, do you hear everything okay?
Yes, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Okay. Welcome to tonight's class. We are going to study the Parsha of Boy. Parsha's Boy is continuing from last week. First of all, the rest of the plagues. We had 7 out of 10 were mentioned last week. And now we are getting to the final 3, which is locust, darkness, and the final plague, which was the hardest plague, known as Makad Bechorot, the plague of the firstborn, when all firstborn of Egypt died and the firstborn of Israel's life was spared. And obviously, this is the plague which gave the final push. Pharaoh is ready now or not. We are going out of Egypt. This is the bottom line. This Parsha is a very special Parsha because it contains a full chapter of commandments which applied both in the times when we were in Egypt, and at the same time, it also commands us how to practice it when we are going to be out of Egypt to other generations. And this is especially mitzvot, which have to do with celebrating the Exodus. And chapter 12 is when God speaks to Moshe and to Aaron, and he gives them the order of things, what to do and when to do what. Mainly, just to put it in context, the chapter 12 is being related to the Jewish people 2 weeks before they left Egypt. So they are standing on the first day of the new month, which is the month of later to become the month of Nisan, or we call it the first month on the monthly count of calendar. And this is how they should celebrate the night of the Exodus, 4 days in advance, the 10th of Nisan, as you see on verse 3. They should each one purchase a sheep for the entire household, keep it for 4 days. On the 4th day, that sheep should be slaughtered. The blood should be placed on the doorposts of the Jewish home. The meat should be roasted in fire. Prepare matzah, unleavened bread, and eat it together with bitter herbs. This is the mitzvah of the so-called the menu of that night of the Exodus. In addition, they are also being told that they must make sure that no meat is left till the next morning, and also how to be eating that meal. They have to wear their belts, they have to have their shoes on their feet, and they have to even hold their staff in their hands, because they are going to be in a state of rush in preparation to leave Egypt, ready to leave. The blood becomes a sign of a Jewish home, which helps the angel of death to skip over that home. That's why it's called Pesach, which Pesach in Hebrew means to skip over. The Jewish homes were skipped over by the angel as he makes his way through, taking the life of the firstborn Egyptians. At the same time, on verse 14, they are being informed that this is going to become a celebration for the rest of eternity, for the rest of life. As it says in verse 14, "V'haya hayom hazeh lachem lezikaron." This day shall be for you as a memorial. V'chagotem oto chag laHashem, and you shall celebrate it as a festival for God. Ledorotechem, for all generations. Chukat olam techagu'u, for all generations, clearly shall celebrate it as an eternal statute. What is the eternal celebration? It goes on with great details, known as the holiday of Passover on the Jewish calendar. Then 7 days, an entire week, we can only eat matzah. We cannot eat any chametz. We can't even own any chametz. And there is severe punishment for having chametz, for owning chametz, for eating chametz. So this is the mitzvah which they are being told 2 weeks in advance how Pesach should be celebrated. You get to verse 29, finally is the story of the Exodus. They are rushed out of Egypt, and then there is a new set of matzah. The night before they were eating matzah, but now they were not planning to eat matzah. They were actually ready to have a nice New York bagel. And yet they were not having a chance to prepare even any preservatives, any bread. They were rushed out, and that's what they ended up with, eating matzah, which they were eating and eating and eating and eating for almost an entire month, until finally that matzah came to an end too. And then is when we began experiencing the famous heavenly food known as the manna. And the same Parsha, the Torah is also going to command us a few mitzvot, which should also be practiced forever, to remember the fact that we left Egypt. One of these famous mitzvot is to put on the tefillin inside on the sign of your hands and in between your eyes, and also to redeem the firstborn donkey if you want to own it. And this is one of the mitzvahs, Pidyon Peter Chamor. A very beautiful Parsha. Like I always like to say, you read the Parsha and you cannot, rather than miss the Passover matzah, the gefilte fish, the mora, the charoset, the environment, the spirit of the Seder. This is usually what happens this week. But I'm going to delve in tonight into yet a very much related subject, but not so much about the plagues of the Pesach, but rather a mitzvah which is mentioned in this week's Parsha, and our sages consider it as being the first mitzvah, because this is the mitzvah which we were first ordered to keep a special mitzvah, not as an individual who was told to do something like Abraham was told to be circumcised, and later it became a national requirement, not like even the mitzvah to have children, which Noah was told, and it is counted in many places as the first mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, but that was not yet told by Moses, and we are not doing it because it was said then. We're only saying it because Moses reconfirmed that when he became our teacher. I'm talking about the mitzvah of establishing a unique calendar known as the Jewish calendar. I'm not talking now about Jewish Standard Time. This is a separate issue altogether. I am talking about the Jewish calendar, which means that till this point, 2,448 years since creation, we kept a typical calendar, which is known as the solar calendar, which the sun circles around the world 365 days, and you cut it and you split it maybe into 12 parts, maybe to 10 parts, and this becomes every month, beginning at the end, not related to anything other than the fact that we need to have some type of system. right? But the sun comes and ends 365 days a year. The lunar calendar, which, by the way, tonight is the celebration of the lunar calendar, because tonight on the Jewish calendar is Rosh Chodesh, as the head of a new month. What makes a new month to actually be the beginning of a new month is the fact that the moon just disappeared and reappeared. And the reappearance of the new moon makes it a new month, which we call it in Hebrew Chodesh. Chodesh is the root Hebrew word for chidush or chadash, which means new. Something new is actually happening. What is the new thing which happens? The moon reappears. It's a new moon. And God wanted us to start new months based on the count of the moon. We have a lot of similarities to the moon. We go down, we go back up, we circle around, we turn back. And the idea is that God says month number 1 and the year is going to start the month of the Exodus. That is known in Hebrew as Chodesh Nisan. In the Torah, we do not have names for the months. Throughout the entire Bible, all the months are assigned as numbers. The month of the Exodus is month number 1. After the moon comes to its end and reappears, it starts month number 2. Matter of fact, tonight on the Jewish calendar, we are starting month number 11. Because in 2 months from now, the month of Passover is going to be again month number 1. And if you look in the Torah, for example, everybody is familiar with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, a very important day. What does the Torah say? I want you to fast, to inflict yourself on the 10th day of the 7th month. Doesn't say Tishrei. And the month of Yom Kippur is not the first month, even though on the regular calendar, we call it the New Year, Rosh Hashanah. So it's always a little bit confusing that the New Year starts really with the 7th month. It's the beginning of a new year. When it comes to eat matzah on Pesach, what does the Torah tell us? On the 15th day of the first month, you should eat matzah. And that's the month of Nisan. The months are actually Aramaic names. These names were adapted when the Jewish people spent time on the Babylonian exile. There is what they adopted these names. These names, some of them may look like Hebrew, but they are not Hebrew words. They are Aramaic Babylonian words. There is no Hebrew word called Shvat, which is the new month. And there is no Hebrew word called Tishrei. You might hear it in Kurdistan or in Iraq, but you're not going to hear it in Israel. You're going to hear it only in the context of the name of a month. Why not? Do you mind closing the door when you're standing there? Thank you. So this is the mitzvah of making a new calendar. This is the calendar that we have. Hopefully, everybody here in the room and on the Zoom receives the beautiful Eastside Torah Center Jewish calendar of the year. And this is which has the months and the dates and the names of the months and all the holidays, being that we are to count a month by the appearance of the moon. And this is what God tells Moses. Take a look in your Chumash, chapter 12, verse 1. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe vel Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim lemor. God spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chadashim. This month shall be the head of the month for you. Rishon u lachem lechodshei hashana. It should be the first of the month of the year for you. This is the idea of Rosh Chodesh. And tradition teaches us that what happened here was that God took Moses and Aaron and he showed them the appearing of the moon. And he said to them, oh, you see, the moon just appeared. This is the beginning of a month. So should you always consider the beginning of a month and the appearance of the moon. Obviously, they are standing at the beginning of the month because it tells them that on the 10th of this month, the next verse, it says, speak to the children of Israel, on the 10th of that month, you should take for you a sheep, a lamb, etc. And I want to ask you a very simple question, a very obvious question, especially that you are familiar with at least a number of the Torah's commandments. What would you consider one of the most important commandments? Or maybe the most important commandment in your eyes? Give me an example. Shabbat, okay, why is Shabbat so important?
Because it's the same letters as Teshuvah.
Okay.
It's also Shabbat can supersede any other holiday.
Shabbat supersedes any holiday. Okay. What else? What other mitzvah would you say is important? Oh, very good. If I would be writing the code, thank God I'm not. What would be the first commandment? The commandment which is actually considered to one of the first of the 10 commandments. What is the first of the 10 commandments? Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am God your Lord. Accept me as a God. If you don't have a God, you have nothing. The first thing is to accept the yoke of God's kingdom upon you. So the obvious question is, why would the mitzvah of making a Jewish calendar be counted as mitzvah number one for the people in Egypt? Especially technically, they didn't need to have a date and a month to know when to slaughter the lamb. God could have said very simply, 10 days from now, you purchase a sheep. Verse 3, what does it say? The 10th of this month. If he's standing at the beginning of the month, he doesn't have to say the 10th of this month. What can you say? 10 days from now, without having a calendar. And later, when he wants to say that on the 14th of the month you should slaughter it, he can say, and 2 weeks from now, you should slaughter it and eat it. There's no need for a calendar to inform us the timeline for when to celebrate Passover. If you want to schedule something which perhaps we don't know, we're not aware of, so you want to put it in, as they say, put it in your calendar. But you don't need a calendar, you're here, and you're telling me 2 weeks from now, okay, I'm going to be there in 2 weeks from now. That becomes the first of all the mitzvot, the beginning of all commandments. And by the way, this is not my question, as you can imagine. Maybe it's your question, but it's not my question. I have this question probably because I read this question by other commentators who are asking this very same question. They want to know. And they offer several answers, but I'm going to share 2 or 3 of them. But I want to emphasize on the third one. There is an answer which is given by actually the Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra, we all know, the 12th century sage who had lived in Spain, wrote commentary, wrote poetry. Very, very interesting person was the Ibn Ezra. Apparently, he did not have too much luck in his life, physically. He was very successful in having his knowledge provided for us, but they say that he was such as, they say in Yiddish, he was very poor. Any business he put his hand to went crashing. They say that once he said that if I'm going to invest in candles, the sun will never set. The sun will never set because he invested in candles. And candles can only come to good use if it gets dark. He says, maybe I should invest in shreds. And then people will never die. You know, shreds that you put on the shrouds. Maybe I should invest in shrouds that no one will die because no one is going to purchase shrouds. There's actually a cute story about him. He didn't want to receive any help from community members. And once the rabbi really wanted to help him, decided that he's going to pretend losing some dollar bills or whatever coin it was on the way from Ibn Ezra's house to the synagogue. And he knows that Ibn Ezra walks early morning to the synagogue. He's going to see a dollar bill on the floor. You found it in a city, you can pick it up and put it in your pocket. Because no one can identify a dollar bill. So the rabbi put out a few of those bills and is watching what's going to happen. Next thing you know, Ibn Ezra appears in the synagogue and he says, you know, he's taking off a handkerchief from his eyes. He says, Rabbi, I woke up today and I wanted to know if I can walk to synagogue without looking where I'm walking. So I put an handkerchief over my eyes to see if I can make it. And I made it. Again, he didn't see the money, obviously, right? This was Ibn Ezra, a great sage, but very, very great sage. He says an interesting explanation. He says simply that among all the mitzvot, we have mitzvot which are in the Torah specified in great detail. But the experience of this mitzvah perhaps can happen to one person in a lifetime once. Most people might never experience it. And yet, a lot of details is being invested in the verses to talk about this mitzvah. For example, he gives metzora, leprosy. The Parsha in Torah, which talks about leprosy, right? That you become contaminated. How many people become lepers? Very few. And if it happens to you once in your lifetime, maybe. And yet there are so many verses. Yet a calendar that every Jew needs to keep to know when's Passover, and when is Rosh Hashanah. And if you don't know when Passover is, you might, God forbid, eat bread and be so severely punished. So this is obviously much more critical than Metzora. Yet, the calendar, which is maybe the most basic, fundamental, important mitzvah, no insight. You have one verse, verse 2. This month should be the head of the month for you. Boom, bingo. What, how, where, who makes this new month? Wait for the tradition to teach you. Rely on the oral tradition to get the information. Says Ibn Ezra that the reason why making a calendar and establishing a calendar is mentioned as mitzvah number 1 is for this very fact that from this mitzvah we have the sign, we have the proof that you cannot just accept the written tradition. If you want to study Torah, you want to accept the Torah, you must simultaneously believe that we have a tradition how this Torah is meant to be practiced. That's the way Torah, this is the definition of Torah. And therefore, the Torah begins with a mitzvah, which anybody who wants to find out about this mitzvah needs to rely on tradition. How Rosh Chodesh is established. And that's exactly the message. This is what Ibn Ezra says. There's yet another explanation that the Rebbe spoke about, also explaining very deeply that just like we have an obligation and a responsibility to elevate the physical world and to make it into a home to God, there is a similar obligation to elevate time. Time itself is also a creation. Imagine, as Jewish people, we know that we have a responsibility to rectify the world. How do we make a nicer world? If you take skin of a cow and you process it to build up a pair of tefillin, you just asked me about tefillin before class, right? Mm-hmm. So this tefillin that you purchased is made out the skin of a cow. So that cow was just a cow in the field, eating grass, giving milk. One day it was slaughtered properly, and the meat was being used for cholent, and the skin was used to be processed and make from it a box of tefillin that you are going to be praying with it tomorrow morning, right? What did you do? You elevated something physical and you made it a part of servicing God. So you didn't just elevate that particular piece of skin. Symbolically, you elevated any cow in the world which is associated with the world of animals and cows, sent a representative of them, Mr. Cow, or Miss whatever, Mr. Cow, I guess, from whoever it was, Mrs. Cow, I don't want to say it, then I'm going to be in trouble, to get it and to send it into the process machine and to become a pair of tefillin. So everybody knows that cows are serving a purpose which brings Jewish religious life into its meaning, into its completion. That's what the story of the cow is. But it's not only physical items. There is also a creation of God called time. Time. Right? What is time? Time was also created. Who was created first, time or place? Who was created first, time or space? You can't have time without space. Can you have space without time?
Well, light represents time because you.
Well, if you have something created, what does it mean? That it wasn't here till now, and it now came to be. So time is first, right? Time represents that the idea of something which was created until now it wasn't here. So time comes before place. So yet time must be elevated. So when you take and you establish a calendar, tonight we are announcing it's Rosh Chodesh at the beginning of a new month. Why? Because God commanded us that the appearance of the new moon should make this day a beginning of a month. So by declaring this day Rosh Chodesh, this day has partially holiness to it, meaning the day is now associated with a godly purpose. You're putting them in the context of the beginning of a new month. Being that it's the beginning of a month, so the entire month which follows its beginning is also part of the same achievement of putting everything in the context of bringing it in a relationship with godliness, with meaning. So being the time is before place, so the first mitzvah is to sanctify time. That's why Rosh Chodesh is mitzvah number 1. Make sense? But I'm going to share with you a very beautiful insight from one of my favorite commentators, the Italian commentator known as, who is the Italian commentator that we use? No. Rabbi Ovadia of Sforna. Remember the Sforna? Yeah. He's printed in many of the classic Chumashim that bring this foreigner. Before I share with you this foreigner, I'm going to make myself a tea. Give me 1 second, okay? Take a break. Meantime, you can digest what we learned till now.
Why is it quiet over here?
But doesn't the
That is a true statement.
giving us of this first mitzvah set up the format for all the other hagim, literally knowing.
But it's not only about Chagim. We have other things in Judaism besides Chagim.
Right.
Pray in the morning, pray in the evening.
I know it's
I think that Ibn Ezra is printed in the bottom of you want to read the footnote and you Chumash, I think you read it. Read it, please.
doesn't say who said. Who
Here, read footnote on
yeah,
page 392. You want to read it loud so I can read it?
Abraham.
Here, read it for me, please. Read clear. That inside, read. Why
Why is the precept of Rosh Chodesh determining the new month? First commandment recorded in the Torah.
Okay.
When learning of the first precept, a person will immediately be struck by the question, why, where are the practical details of this law? The verse states only, this month shall be the head of the months for you. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you.
No mention is made of the requirements of a Jewish court to establish the new month, right? The need for witnesses who have spotted the new moon, etc., which are all crucial components for these commandments. But it doesn't say anything about it. From this, you learn at the very outset, when embarking on your study of the very first precept of the Torah, the scripture can only be understood by means of oral law. Right at the beginning of the legal assignment of the Torah, a foundation is laid down that the written and oral tradition are indispensable to each other. Rabbi Ibn Ezra. See, I didn't make it up. Let me tell you how interesting Sforno. What does the Sforno say? Gewaldig, the Sforno. The Sforno says it's such a simple explanation, but yet so original. He says, what is a crucial and essential difference between being a slave and being free? He says one of the fundamental differences is, are you in charge on your own time? Or you are being told when to do what and how to fill your time with. I will tell you a short story. I had a grandmother. Her name was Leah Rachel Farkash, my father's mother, Alea Shalom. She was a Holocaust survivor. She was in Auschwitz, and she had a number of her arm until the day she passed away in the late 90s. Very special Bobby, because every Bobby is special, but obviously she was very special. And before the last years of his life, when her husband, my grandfather, fell a couple times in the house, and she was the only one there, not able to help him to get up. My father, wanting to be a big help and support, got for both of them the nicest, most precious, most comfortable nursing home next to their house in the city of Bnei Brak, where they are going to be able to spend their later years there. Wasn't easy to get in there. But the director of that nursing home happened to be, was a student of my grandfather. And he he heard the name. He said, "Oh, I got to take care of my teacher." And it was fine. They set him up. They organized the expenses. They had an apartment. They figured out they're going to sell the apartment. It's going to pay for the. It's going to pay for the care. They were there not more than 3 or 4 days. And my father gets a call from the director that your mother packed her suitcase. She's outside ready to leave. It was Saturday night. My father took a taxi. He drove down to Bnei Brak from Jerusalem. Going over to his mother, what's going on? You got the best place in the world. It's comfortable. They even have, a couple, they have 2 bathrooms in the same room. So they shouldn't have to wait for each other. It was beautiful. David, I'm going to make sure. Very nice. And she says, I want to get out of here. Ma, my father asked, why? What's wrong? The food, the company, what? This is also very similar people, similar backgrounds. They weren't like put away in a place that they have to mingle with, breach new cultures. This is all very same people. My grandmother said to my father, listen, my son, I was already once in a place that they told me when I should go sleep and when I need to eat and when I need to get up. I'm not doing it again. You understand? She's an Auschwitz survivor. She was told already when to go sleep and when to get up. I'm not doing it. I am to live my own life. My father put them in a taxi, took them to our house, to my parents' house. My parents gave them their bedroom. They took another kid's room, and that's where they lived for the next 3 years, fully taken care of by my mother and father. They live a wonderful, wonderful life for these 3 years when they lived together. What does the foreigner say? Foreigner says, till now we were slaves. Slave doesn't carry a watch. Doesn't matter. What are you going to look? What time and what's going to help you? When the master decides it's time for you to be and pick up, put away, that's exactly when you're going to have to do it. When to do and what to do. He's going to tell you, you think 9 o'clock is breakfast? No. He's going to tell you what time breakfast, whenever he feels it's time for you to eat breakfast. And he's going to tell you when to go sleep and when to wake up. This is the attitude of a slave. Free people are people who can carry their own watches and says, I want to get up tomorrow at times I want to get up. I want to get up to shacharit. I want to get up to eat breakfast. I want to go this thing. I want to do this thing. I am in charge on my time. I had enough of telling me when to stand and where to sit. I want to do it the way I want to do it. My life. A free person, even if you go to work and you have a job, obviously you have to be following time, but you choose to take the job because you feel that this is the source of support and income. So it's not that you were forced into a situation of time. You chose to be part of that lifestyle, which makes you be up 7 o'clock in the office or to be 7 o'clock at shacharit. That's my choice. I don't have to do it. I choose to be part of that lifestyle. But not to have a choice and not to be able to decide what time to do, and not only what time, what to do on what time, to fill in the content of time, this is the crucial slavery of Egypt. Says the Ibn Ezra, God tells the Jewish people, you're about to be free. Let me tell you, the first mitzvah I'm giving you, create your calendar. Time is yours. HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodeshim. This month is to you, and to you means not only generally, but lachem means legally. Legally to you. I'm giving you the time in your hands. You're going to decide when the new month is in your Jewish way, and when Passover is, and when Rosh Hashanah is. We are not depending on anyone else's time schedule or timetable. You're going to tell me when what? I know when I need to celebrate Pesach. I remember one of the yearly years at the East Side Torah Center, a community person, it was before Pesach, and I came to bring him matzah. And I said, you're going to have a Seder? He said, we did it already. I said, you did it already, the Seder? We're a week from Passover. He says, no, but spring break was this week, and the kids went to Chicago. So we decided to have a Seder, when it's convenient. I said, great, you might have enjoyed the matzah, but you did not celebrate Pesach. This is depending on the school system. They tell me when to make Pesach. What am I? I'm a slave or I'm a free man? The old definition of freedom is that you are being given the opportunity to choose your own time schedule and to decide when and where and what to do on that time. Says the Sefarno, you wonder why that was the first mitzvah? Because this is defining what freedom is all about. That we have time. We can do with our time what we want to do in our time. Palemayish, verstehst? What time is now, by the way? Talking about time.
8:14.
If you look in this Parsha, it's very interesting that a lot of issues in stories in this Parsha is all time related. Number one, the very timing of the Exodus. They were redeemed. It says the moment they were redeemed is because that had to be in that moment. If they would have await an extra moment, they might have never able to live. The Kabbalah talks about the fact that the exodus from Egypt is not only something physical, escaping Pharaoh. Egypt was metaphorically a very difficult, challenging impact on the Jewish people, to the expression that the Kabbalah uses, that they were lured into the 49 gates of impurity, which means the ultimate of the ultimate. There's only one gate left. Once you get into that gate, you sink into impurity and you're stuck. And it was the moment, really the moment, that they had to go out, is when the moment happened. That God himself had to reveal himself. If God would have waited, would have been late. You got to have a time, a watch, and to know the moment. Matter of fact, what makes chametz? What makes chametz? Chametz? Time. You keep your watch and you take a look, and once the water and the flour is mixed for 1 second, cost 18 minutes, it is chametz. A second less, it is kosher. Matzah. 18 minutes, not more. The max. It's all about taking charge on time, showing us and alluding to us to all these different mitzvot, whether the mitzvah of staying away from chametz or the mitzvah to keep and to eat matzah, is to remember the importance of time, how much time placed was importance in the whole story of the Exodus. What do we say every Pesach? We pick up the matzah, or we point to the matzah, and what do we say? Matzah zu, you hear me, yeah? Matzah zu shanu ochlim, this matzah that we eat. Why are we eating it? What do we say? Because the dough of our ancestors did not have a chance to rise till the King of Kings revealed himself and took us out of Egypt. You eat the matzah and you say right away, you know why I'm eating matzah? Because I couldn't stay in there one extra moment. God was there picking us up now. Get up and leave. Couldn't happen a moment later. Time. Time is a very important, but also some kind of a difficult, challenging idea, phenomenon. Time is something which once it's gone, right? You spend a minute, an hour, a day in vain, that vanity can never be repaired because tomorrow's hour is already a new hour which needs its own correction, needs its own care. It's a minute. You can accomplish so much with a minute. Take, for example, one of the most important things in Judaism. You mentioned before, tshuva. How long does it take to do tshuva? The Zohar says, B'shaita chada u'beriga chada. It takes one single moment. You have to have a sincere resolution. I am changing. Tshuva. Yes, you have to keep on processing it and internalizing it. But the idea of tshuva is just a momentarily resolution. I am not the same person as I was till now. I want to be somebody else. I want to change. A moment. The Rebbe once said that the previous Rebbe was in Vienna, and he was escorted by Viennan Jews, which are known to be more Yekish. You know, Yekis. Yekis is like very exact. And they were waiting for the train, and one pointed to his watch and he said, Noch da ein Minute. There's 1 minute. And the previous Rebbe responded, can you do tshuva? There's 1 minute. It's a minute that we can do tshuva, and that's it. The previous Rebbe once said that the watch is like a hawk telling you all time is moving on. You better improve. It's like, it's like a book of Musar, of ethical improvement. Dunk, 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 dunk. That's what usually time is. It's a moment. It's really a moment. Yet, the clock doesn't have to be only rebuking you. You can look on it from a positive perspective as well. I shared with you already once the story. Tell it to you again. The story was that the famous Hasidic master known as the seer of Lublin, the early Hasidic master, he passed away. And they were dividing whatever he left between his children. He had a son, his name was Rabbi Yossel. Rabbi Yossel got 3 items from his father's inheritance. He got his belt, he got some other garment, and he got the clock which was hung in his father's cabinet, in his father's office. After the Shiva, after the period of mourning, they make their way home. Rabbi Yossel ends up in a inn on his way home, known as a kretschma. And lo and behold, there is a snowstorm. And instead of staying there 1 night that he was able to afford, he ended up staying there a couple of days. Couldn't continue traveling. At the end of the days, he wants to depart, but he can't pay. So the innkeeper asked him, what do you have instead? Can you give me anything of your belonging? He said, look, I'm coming back from my father. He left me a belt. He left me maybe a pair of shoes. He left me a clock. You want? So the innkeeper talks to his wife, says, what am I going to do with the belt? But the clock, at least we'll hang it up in our hotel and let us know when we have to go milk the cows, whatever. So they took the clock away and they put it in one of the rooms of that inn. A little while later, one of the great Hasidic masters, it was called the Rebbe of Rudeshitz, is traveling through that hotel, and he just also checked in for a night. And all night he's jumping around his room, unable to settle, dancing. Next morning, the innkeeper asks him, what was with you? Why were you dancing all night? I heard you making noise. You couldn't relax. Everything okay? So he responded back by asking, tell me, whose clock is hanging in that room that you put me up with? So the innkeeper says, oh, that clock. One day I had over here a son of the Seer of Lublin. He got stuck here for a few days and he couldn't pay me. The only thing he had with him was in his possession a clock from his father's inheritance. So I took it. So the great Rabbi of Rudeshit says, now I understand why I kept on dancing all night. Because the clock of the Rebbe of Lublin is not the typical clock, which is usually very depressing. Tells you, another hour left of your life, another minute left of you, is gone of your day. You keep on looking on a clock and looking that you're missing out of your life, basically. You're getting older. But the clock of the Rebbe of Lublin is a clock which keeps on telling me we are a minute and an hour closer to the coming of Mashiach. If Mashiach was meant to come, let's say 10 o'clock at night, and before by 7 o'clock it was 3 hours left, now it's only 2 hours left. So it's very exciting. And that's what kept me dancing all night. I felt like I'm getting closer. I couldn't sleep. So you can have the same clock and two different views. You can view it as a item which stands and, keeps informing you how bad life is, how much opportunities you're losing, and this is over, and this is over, and it's over, and that's over. Or you can look on a clock which keeps you giving you hope and excitement. Like imagine you have a nice race, child's wedding, a vacation you're waiting for or something. And what is the clock? You look on the clock and say, yeah, 2 days closer, yeah, a day closer, yeah, 5 hours closer, that's happening. My best friend is coming to visit town, whatever it is, right? That's the difference. The point is, according to the Sforno, we were given control on time. This is the story of the first mitzvah in Parsha's boy. It's all about teaching us and letting us know how much you can lose in a moment, but how much can you gain in a moment? Chametz. One moment it becomes chametz. Our sages actually tell us the difference in the letters chametz in Hebrew, the letters chet, mem, tzadik, 11. And the difference between the word matzah is mem, tzadik, hey. Two of the letters are the same. Mem and tzadik, you have both with the word chametz, and you also have in the word matzah, right? Same letters. What's the one letter which is a difference between them? Is the chet and the hey. By chametz there is a chet, and by matzah there is a hey. What is the difference between the chet and the hey? One dot of ink. If you keep the dot, if you take off a dot on the left side of the letter, it becomes a hey. You fill up with a dot, it becomes what? A chet. It's all about the one moment. And the moment what makes it chametz, and the moment what makes it matzah. Yes, you can acquire your world in a moment. If you decide at this moment, I want to do something good, you accomplish. The main thing is to know, to be a free man, you carry a watch. I don't mean literally, I never carried a watch. I got a watch when I got married. Mrs. Farkash's grandmother bought me a watch. Grandfather bought me a watch. And because that was the tradition in the old country, in Poland, in Hungary, they used to buy for the Chatan a golden watch. Also, by you, a golden watch. They told them a golden watch has golden minutes. Basically, time is gold. Rochi's grandfather bought it for me, and I never wore it. And as I got older, I exchanged it for something, and she bought me that some jewelry, I guess. I don't need a watch. I think that's what we end up doing. Never gonna wear. Who wears a golden watch? Nobody. Who wears watches today? You have it on your cell phone.
Yeah, you have a watch here.
No, you have a watch. You are old timers.
You have a watch on your
You are an
phone.
old timer. I told you already. I'm talking today's world. In today's world, David Schneider has a watch. David, no one wears watches these days.
I need it so I can get to Mincha on time.
In the old country, they used to have a watch in the center of town. And sometimes the watch was not too high. Usually it was very high. Why did they put it so high? Because otherwise, no. I don't know why they put it so high. Because everybody used to come over and set it up according to their wishes. When it's according to your height, I wanted to be not 10 o'clock. You know, it fits to my schedule. So you go over, put it very high, you can't reach. That's the whole idea.
But today's watches are more than just time.
Mine's not.
But
You gotta get in.
I can't see the time, you see?
8:20.
Very good. I think it's 8:30. So I want to wish you all utilize your time properly and happily. Have a very good Chodesh Tov. Chodesh comes with the word renewing. The fact that the moon is renewed is because it's an opportunity for everybody to get renewed. I want to dedicate tonight's class to two very special women. Number one is the yard site tonight, Rosh Chodesh Shvat, of Mrs. Farkash's grandmother, which her name was Miriam Bas, the Alter Mordechai, Oleh Shalom, blessed memory, a very, very special woman who really lived the time, with the time, in charge on the time, to control on the time, even though she was a survivor too. And another also dedicating to another lady, Mrs. Farkash's other grandmother, her name was Shana Zelda Bas Reb Nissen, who tonight is the last day of her Shiva, passed away last week. May she rest in Gan Eden and be a source of inspiration. She was also a woman of time, fully in charge on her time, till her last breath. She was going to be in 2 weeks, 99 years old. She was clear, funny, solid, strong. And when she decided she wants to go, she went. That's it. We should all live long and healthy and happy. We should marry the coming of Mashiach. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
All
Rabbi.
the best. Laila Tov.
Thank you,
Thank
Rabbi.
Farkash.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Thank you.
shalom. Take care.
You too.
Be well.
Yeah.